Hello my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. So before we get started, just want to invite everybody to come and join me tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for our live show. It's both on YouTube and on Freedom Slips Revolution Radio, Studio A. So join us tonight, 10 p.m. till midnight, and call in and talk and discuss everything that we see going on in this wild and crazy world that we live in. So if we go over right here to the RSOE feed showing the events that are going on currently across the globe, there are a lot of things happening, as you can see. The first thing that stands out is that big number 4 heading towards Hawaii, and that's a Category 4 hurricane. And then you might notice over close to Japan you have a Category 3 typhoon, and as well as a Category 1 behind it that is strengthening. And so a 1-2 punch is apparently heading towards Japan as we speak. And we just got a quake in Alaska, only a 3.6, but as we can see, there is a lot happening out here, Japan. And if you look further in, you see a tropical storm that's already on that same path that has already hit and gone inland into China. So this area has been just obliterated this year. It's been a brutal season, one after the other. And southern Japan, which was hit with so much flooding, I mean, I would say probably some of the most dramatic photos for sure that we have seen this year came out of that initial flooding in Japan. And they have 2 powerful storms that are going to be hitting them. One basically right after the other in pretty much the same area again. And I can only imagine that the water table there must be really saturated still. And oh my God, you just have to pray for those people. So let us do that, and of course send always our best intentions and prayers. And also for the people of Hawaii who have gone through obviously the greatest eruption of Kilauea in modern times. And Fissure 8, as we have been saying, is going to be a named volcano. And the quakes have really slowed down there, and everything seems to be getting quiet there. But now we have a Category 4 hurricane that apparently is going to brush by it at least. At least it looks like it's probably going to brush by, if not more. And so the USGS doesn't cover a lot of these quakes. So let's take a quick look over here and see what's happening. You see a 3.3 out here, basically towards the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. A 3.1 closer in off the coast of Portugal. Magnitude 4. And then up in France we have a 2.2. Over into Italy we have a swarm still ongoing, 2.2, 3.1, 3.2, 2.1, 2.4. You can see it's very, very active through here and through Iran and Turkey as well, and also over in Greece. Lots of activity going on. And the USGS usually doesn't show much of this. They'll show sometimes some in Iran, which is kind of weird, or Iraq, but they'll never show really in Turkey, and hardly ever. They'll show 1 or 2 in Greece, even though there might be a dozen. And as we were looking at this map yesterday too, I mean, it has signs for volcanic activity, infrastructure disruptions, epidemics, wildlife biological issues. It's great, a great tool. Biological hazards, in which we could only guess this is red tide related in Florida. And a very good friend of mine told me today, sent me a big message, and she is a sister, Evolutionary Energy Arts family member, and yeah, she feels it's time to leave Florida, so she will be leaving Florida now, and heading up into the mountains. And so yeah, we are talking, of course, red tide related with this. As the red tide is now forcing people out of Florida. What maybe Irma didn't do, the red tide is doing. So this is a great tool. Now, looking over at Ventusky, we have right now, you can see this is the ICON model, and you could see Hawaii under the gun, and then most definitely southern Japan and going into China or possibly off into Korea. So if we look at this model right now and we go out a day and 2 days and 3. So basically, you know, Hawaii gets brushed with this model, and Japan, southern Japan gets hit, and goes into the one goes into Korea, and the other one heads up a little bit more north. And so let's go back and let's switch to the GFS and see what the GFS model is showing. One day out, 2 days out, and this hit right here is exactly the area that was getting so much flooding before. And 3 days out. And again, you know, the eastern side of the storm goes again and impacts the Big Island especially, and then on up. So it looks as if, for sure, Japan, Korea, and China, they have a lot to worry about and they have a lot to get ready for. And Hawaii will definitely probably be affected by by the hurricane that is heading its way as well. And here we could see the same thing on Null School. As we go out 1 day and 2 days and 3 days. And so, you know, as far as the areas over here, they're all saturated. You know, they've all been hammered. Especially worried about this area in here, because this is the area that had that tremendous flooding where we were just seeing, you know, we saw whole houses and garages just floating down basically the river. People scrambling to grab onto power lines. And this same area is going to get hammered again. So, let's just again send our prayers to them. And so already battered, Western Japan braces for a 1-2 typhoon punch this week. 2 typhoons are approaching Western Japan, including areas already battered by torrential rain and flooding last month, with the weather agency warning of heavy downpours, strong winds, high waves. Typhoon Sulik, which is maintaining its strength and packing gusts of up to 216 kph, is projected to approach the Amami Island chain and the southern part of Kyushu from later Tuesday to early Wednesday. As of 5 p.m. Tuesday, it was traveling northwest across the Pacific Ocean, some 110 kilometers east-northeast of Amami Island, at a speed of 25 kilometers per hour, and an atmospheric pressure of 950 hectopascals at its center. So the meteorological agency forecasts that that typhoon is unlikely to make landfall on Kyushu, moving instead across the sea to its west, but stormy weather is expected. And so after that you have Typhoon Cimarron, which is currently located far south of Tokyo and is projected to approach western Japan on Friday and make landfall. That typhoon is packing gusts up to 162 kilometers per hour. But the weather agency expects it to strengthen a bit while moving towards the archipelago. And so it's definitely a 1-2 punch, and we will see what happens out there. Any way you look at it, not a good situation for the whole area. And many people have said, you know, why are you calling it a hurricane? Shouldn't it be a typhoon, and vice versa? So it really depends on where they are located. The only difference between any of these storms really is location. And as it says here, hurricanes and typhoons are the same weather phenomenon. They're tropical cyclones. A tropical cyclone is a generic term used by meteorologists to describe a rotating, organized system of clouds and thunderstorms that originate over a tropical or subtropical waters and has a closed, low-level circulation. The weakest tropical cyclones are called tropical depressions. If a depression intensifies such that the maximum sustained winds reach 39 miles per hour, the tropical cyclone becomes a tropical storm. Once a tropical cyclone reaches maximum sustained winds of 74 miles an hour or higher, then it's a hurricane, a typhoon, or a tropical cyclone, depending on where the storm originates in the world. In the North Atlantic, North Central Pacific, and Eastern North Pacific, the term hurricane is used. The same type of disturbance in the Northwest Pacific is called a typhoon. Meanwhile, in the South Pacific and in the Indian Ocean, the generic term tropical cyclone is used, regardless of the strength of wind associated with the weather system. So there you have it. That's basically the difference. And so once it passes like Hawaii and heads off towards Japan and China, then it becomes basically a typhoon. And it's a hurricane when it's in the central or in the eastern part. So that's really it. That's how you determine what is what, and it's really just semantics. So this is out of NOAA. So 5 things to know about Hurricane Lane, which is now a Category 4 and may threaten Hawaii. And basically current status, Category 4, and it's curving northward. We'll see. I mean, it would have to curve a little bit more towards the east. And of course that depends on what's happening atmospherically with a lot of the high-level winds. And then, of course, will it weaken? It's expected to weaken somewhat in the period between Wednesday or Thursday, but still likely to be hurricane strength, so the island should remain on high alert. And the primary cause for weakening is that the storm is expected to encounter more vertical wind shear. And that's what's happening over in the Atlantic, besides the cooler temperatures. When you have an El Nino developed, and it gives you that vertical shear, which hinders Atlantic development of storms. And this area of water is, obviously, maybe the timing is good because, the volcanic activity has decreased. I can only imagine that the waters around Hawaii must be fairly warm, just directly by where the volcanism was going on, the magma flow. But luckily, the wind shear and the fact that it's calmed down as far as the flow. Hopefully, this does not turn out to be anything, as major. So far, the 2018 Northeast Pacific hurricane season has generated more major hurricane days through August 20th than any other Northeastern Pacific hurricane season on record. Pretty wild. And it's because of that pool of warmer water, which does remain intact across the Pacific between 500 and 750 miles south of the Hawaiian Islands. And a hurricane that forms and moves due westward about 600 miles south of Hawaii can maintain its strength into the central Pacific. If winds direct the storm northward towards the island, it has a chance to survive, and that was the path taken in '92 by Hurricane Iniki. And so let's see what happens, and let's pray for the best, as always, for all those people there that have been through a lot already. Flash floods kill 8 hikers in gorge in southern Italy. And flash floods, as we've been talking about, are much more common in the planet this year than they were just a year ago. They've increased in intensity, and they've taken many lives this year. And so heavy rain flooded a gorge filled with hikers Monday in the southern region of Calabria, killing at least 8, Italy's Civil Protection Agency said. At least another 5 were missing. The prefect's office said 23 people were rescued from the flash flood. At the Raganello Gorge, they include a 10-year-old boy treated for hypothermia, who was among 7 that the Civil Protection Agency said were hospitalized. It's unclear how many people were missing, but there were at least 36 hikers in 2 organized groups inside the 7.5-mile-long gorge, a popular aquatic trekking spot. TV images show rescuers scaling down the sides of a steep rock face to bring the hikers to safety. Guides are not required, making it impossible to know how many people were on their own inside the canyon. The problem is we don't know how many people were knocked over by this flood. There is a split in the terrain that's very tight and high. At its most narrow point, it's just yards wide, with walls varying from 1,300 feet to 2,300 feet in height. And so the height of the floodwaters was some 8 feet deep. Really, that had to be terrifying. And let us hope for the best, and let us hope those other people are found safe and sound. So 69 major earthquakes hit the Pacific's Ring of Fire in just 48 hours, driving fears that the big one is about to hit California. But as we, and it could, really, it could, although most likely you'd probably see a progression where we would see Japan getting hit first, rolling up into Alaska, down into Cascadia, and then California would have to worry. And so, that's how it should roll out according to how, forces typically move. The forces from this, as we also talked, could go straight across and go over towards South America and Central America as well. But ultimately, ultimately it'll end up at some point the energy transferring down towards California. But luckily for those, on the West Coast there, the likelihood is you would see it roll through these other areas first. And when we look at what's going on there, it is quieting somewhat, and we'll take a peek at that in a moment. Of course, quieting is not always good because sometimes things build, but one of Omaha's wettest days on record, widespread flash flooding in Nebraska. And yeah, there is major power outages as well, 16,000 customers at least without power. Cities, the rainfall was incredible. It was 6.15 inches of rain. The record is 6.46, so this wasn't a record this time, but still. We've seen so many records fall. And one of our own family members, Andrew, is in this area. Always pray for his well-being. He's definitely said he's feeling stuff coming. He could sense it. He's very intuitive. And you see some of these numbers. Look at some of these numbers as far as the rainfall. Very intense. Very, very intense. And hard to see, hard to breathe. The U.S. West is struggling with smoke. And yes, we are hearing that from our family members as well. Smoke from the wildfires clogged the sky across the West, blotting out mountains and city skylines from Oregon to Colorado, delaying flights and forcing authorities to tell even healthy adults in Seattle to stay indoors. As the large cities dealt with unhealthy air for the second summer in a row, experts warned that it could become more common as the American West faces larger and more destructive wildfires because of heat and drought blamed on climate change. Officials must also prioritize resources during the longer firefighting season, as so some blazes may be allowed to burn in unpopulated areas, and they've actually come out and said it's going to be a year-round fire season. And so many are up in arms about this, and so many are very suspicious about everything that's happening out there. But without a doubt, it's definitely not a pleasant situation. So here we have the Pacific Northwest, all through the West, breathing issues. Down in Florida, breathing issues with the red tide. As I told you about that family member, she doesn't even live right on the coast. She's inland a little bit, but still, she's been sick so much that it's time to move. So she is moving on, and as I've shared with you, the same thing. It's I've moved away from that coast area as well, and am currently scouring and scouting other options as well, because we are definitely in a significant ramp-up phase, and so many of you feel it. We could sense it. Touching on India, as the floods are subsiding over in Kerala somewhat now, but we have floods hitting the neighboring states as well, and becoming deadly, with at least 12 people that have been killed and over 4,300 rescued now in Karnataka's district of Kodagu, on the border with Kerala. And so this is right on the border with the area that you have almost 1 million people homeless and refugees from. Almost 1 million, anywhere between 800,000 up to 1 million. That's incredible. Incredible. In this particular area, Kodagu, you have 845 houses damaged, 773 partially. The storm damaged 76 miles of road, 58 bridges, 278 government buildings, and 3,800 electric poles as of yesterday. And so, around the globe we're seeing this, and you guys recognize it now. Rare snowfall reported in Uruguay, and Brazilian and North American meteorologists both agreed it was snow that was seen falling in parts of Uruguay on Sunday the 19th. Since Uruguay is located within a temperate zone of the Tropic of Capricorn, the country has warm summers and crisp winters with almost unknown freezing temperatures. Almost unknown. But a cold front swept over Uruguay and Argentina on the 18th and 19th, dropping very rare snow on parts of Uruguay and Grapel in Argentina. While not the coldest area of the season, enough moisture lingering in the area allowed snow to fall on the higher terrains. So, high temperatures were roughly 14 degrees Celsius lower on Sunday than Saturday across the region. Farther south, the same storm system and cold air mass produced Grapel across eastern Argentina near Bahia Blanca. And so, throughout all this, it is a grand solar minimum. And basically, with all this going on, we're still heading towards a mini ice age / and/or ice age. Major damage after 2 tornadoes rip up through the North Island in New Zealand. Large waterspout formed on the Bay of Plenty in New Zealand on August 20th and hit the Hope Beach just after 1700 NZST time, damaging at least 6 properties. And it was a massive waterspout that came out of nowhere, and that is massive for a waterspout. And there's a video here for you guys to check out. Excuse me. So, yeah, at least 6 properties damaged, roofs torn off, windows smashed. Luckily, no reports of injuries. So, actually, there's a couple videos there for you guys, and I have all the links for you. And so now we move on to the Watchers News Brief. We have a new major explosion at Stromboli volcano in Italy. We have an EF1 tornado reported in Oklahoma's Mays County. And you can see the damage that did. Rainfall ends Missoula's longest recorded dry spell at 47 days in Montana. And of course, Montana was seeing all sorts of crazy flooding earlier, way earlier in the spring. 5 people killed, 9 injured as a landslide hits vehicles in Jammu and Kashmir. And again, this is India. It's getting pounded. And we touched on the hikers. Kerala received 42% excess rainfall during the 28 southwest monsoon season in India. A little graph there to show you. Huge hail accumulations in Huixquilucan in Mexico. Massive hail. And look at them digging out in Mexico from the hail. We have the worst anthrax outbreak in 20 years hitting French farms. More than 50 cows, sheep, and horses have died in France's most serious outbreak of anthrax in 20 years. Officials said the infection has spread to 28 farms since June. The last serious French outbreak was in 2008 when the anthrax spread to 23 farms. Nearly 2 million acres are on fire in the United States right now. 2 million acres. From 110 large fires. This does not include smaller fires within each complex of fires. Wow. So 1.9 million acres are or have been ablaze, as you could see. And that's a map from NOAA. And they did find a meteorite from July 27th, Arizona Fireball found. And it was sold to a Prescott collector. And as we're going to touch on, ice deposits found at the moon's poles. The lull in activity at Kilauea is continuing. Sulfur dioxide emissions are drastically reduced. Does not mean it's over yet. Doesn't mean it's over. And so we already touched on those floods, and we touched on the tornadoes. So we have heavy hail destroying harvests in Georgia, and this is not Georgia, U.S. This is Georgia over towards Russia and Europe. Was part of the Soviet Union. And so heavy hail and rain has hit Georgia's Kakheti region, destroying the watermelon and grape harvest, flooding houses and streets, and damaging infrastructure. According to the Center for Active Impact on Natural Events, 200 weather rockets were fired, and although cloud masses were significantly reduced, it did nothing to help save the harvest. Interesting, 200 weather rockets were fired. So again, we know, people manipulate the climate. I mean, China does it all the time, and right here they're talking about it, trying to decrease. And we had talked about it, and some of you guys had said, why in the world would the governments, the militaries, if they could do weather control, why wouldn't they try to mitigate some of this? And you know what? That's a great point. That's a great point. So why wouldn't they? Instead, we're left with feeling suspicions of the other end of the spectrum. Entire fields were wiped out during a 20-minute deluge. Everything that could be destroyed was destroyed. So in total during this year, the hails have destroyed approximately 200 hectares of agricultural land. And again, as we've been saying, food shortages, crop losses, it's here. This is what we got. So let's look at what we have. We see a couple of earthquakes over here. This is USGS. 4.9 Tanzania, 4.7 in the Congo, 4.9 Central Mid-Atlantic Ridge, 4.8 in Bolivia, 4.6 in Chile. We have a 4.6 up here. Then this is relatively recent. When I was looking before, I didn't see this one. So that's pretty significant for this area. It's only 10 kilometers deep, which, that's not deep at all. But interesting, off the coast of Vancouver, just northwest of Vancouver. If we go down and take a peek, it seems like the aftershocks are starting to dwindle. We have 9 basically over here in the area of the Great Quake, the 8.2. They are still pretty deep, but we did get one that's only at 20 kilometers deep. That's the first one I've seen that's relatively that is really shallow when you get down to it. So we shall see what else develops over in that area. One of the other things that really stood out was this. Look at Hawaii. Two quakes. 2 quakes in Hawaii. Wow, I can't ever remember seeing that, even under a normal situation, for a 24-hour period. So yeah, to say things have quieted down there, they've definitely quieted down. In the U.S., we see over at the New Madrid area in Ridgely, Tennessee, a 1.2, and Nebraska and Oklahoma. And then, no major activity. 5.1 over in Indonesia. We have a 5.0. We have a couple of smaller ones, 4.6, 4.8. And a couple over at Japan, 4.6, 4.2. So feels very quiet right now out there. It feels very quiet. 338 total. Still see swarming up in Alaska. There was roughly, I think, about 100 up in this area, which again is a slight decrease from what it was. And typical swarming through California. And one over here in Italy, 4.1. And as we saw on the other map, there was actually a lot more going on over there. And again, if you go over to evolutionaryenergyarts.com, you can see the live data feeds. So that'll give you an idea of what the Schumann's doing, which is basically looking as it has looked, so pretty much the same. And each one of these is a different location. We have 2 locations that are not reporting at the moment, and that is Saudi Arabia and that is New Zealand. And the most active location is number 4, which has been that way for a while, which is Canada. And then we have other info looking at here. Here's another way to look at the info from that with the different stations. Gets into some explanations. And so when we look at solar wind, goes primary and goes secondary, we can see it was running pretty high. And it's now starting to tail off there a little bit. And then this is really interesting. This is the Global Consciousness Project. And so we really did hit a very high peak here, which shows that people are sensing something. You know, this is just a fascinating project. And it shows that you know, something was being sensed, and now it's just gone totally off the charts in the other way. And then we have, of course, the rest of the sets, which we've looked at a few things. Excuse me, I need my coffee here, guys. Yes, it's 1 o'clock and I'm still drinking coffee. Sorry. So, you know, we can see basically the latest global average temperatures. Looking at the Arctic sea ice. This is where it's going to get interesting to see how it curves back upwards. As the totals have been running higher than most years besides 2014. This is going to be the next couple weeks should be a very interesting period to see how it trends. And the Greenland ice sheet totals, number of sunspots, and where we are. Stratospheric radiation, as we know, everybody's feeling it, it's increasing. And here we can look at solar X-ray flux, proton flux, and geomagnetic activity. And then we have a listing of quakes from another source other than the USGS, and volcano activity, and you can see what's active. So, mysterious glimpse. We've seen these cities in the sky in China and Japan that keep showing up. And in recent years, you know, this has been a very interesting phenomenon. Sometimes ghost towns appear in the sky. Witnesses remain baffled even for years. Some are even terrified by these spectacular sightings, but what are these strange shadows in the sky? What are we really seeing? According to scientists, these ghost cities that appear floating amongst the dense fog are mirages, or naturally occurring optical phenomenon, in which light rays bend to produce a displaced image of distant objects of the sky. In contrast to a hallucination, a mirage is really optical phenomenon that can be captured on camera, since light rays are actually refracted to form a false image at the observer's location. And you know, there's been just phenomenal cloud patterns. You know, we still are seeing these clouds that are, you know, perfect straight lines, squares, triangles. You know, very, very odd things. Oh, I have there's something I got to show you guys. I'm gonna have to dig it up for a later video. Very, very interesting. So, I mean, what are we really seeing here? As you see this one over here. It looks like a city in the sky. It's crazy. Some think it's holograms from Project Blue Beam, a theory that claims NASA is attempting to implement a New Age religion with the Antichrist at its head and start a new world order via a technology simulated second coming. Others say parallel universes, portals to other dimensions, opening up above the Earth, mysterious experiments in an attempt to find or even create miniature black holes at CERN. But curiously, none of these floating cities have actually solidified and stayed there. Some have reported 3 suns, the so-called Eye of God, balls of fire, and now something so surprising can only be described as a glimpse of the celestial kingdom. Like, are those angel wings flying up in the heavens, quote unquote. So basically, yeah, we have crazy phenomenons going on. And share your guys' thoughts with what you think these things really, really are. So mysterious ribbons, and we talked about this yesterday, mysterious ribbons of light dubbed Steve are not auras after all, or auroras after all. Scientists say the sky glows represent an entirely new celestial phenomenon. So they started seeing these things and studying them in 2016, and they thought that they were auroras, but the study shows they form differently. Experts now say they're a distinct phenomenon from what was previously unknown. And so what are we seeing, really? And then we get scientists that are giving us terms and words for phenomenon, but they're just basically taking guesses. You know, they might give you the how they feel it's forming scientifically. But what really are we seeing? You know, are we really going through a dimensional shift? And, you know, if we are, perhaps our reality is merging into another reality. And so perhaps what we're seeing is phenomena that is natural in this other reality as has been put out there before. So what do you guys think? We touched on this as well. Ice found on the moon's surface, patches of frost around the moon's north and south poles could provide a source of water for humans, say astronomers. Scientists spotted the telltale signature of frozen water in an infrared measurement taken by NASA's moon mineralogy mapper, an instrument that flew on India's Chandrayaan Mission 1 to the moon a decade ago. So freshly analyzed data shows that water ice chunks lurk on the ground. So, okay, so this mission was a decade ago, and now they're coming out with this right now. So look at timing and stuff. So look at how they are trying to form our opinion on things. And they do this all the time. So why would they come out with this right now? Did they really just have this data sitting around and nobody looked at it for a decade, and then now, oh, let's analyze it right now when, you know, all the craziness is happening in the world? Always look at it a little bit of suspicion and thinking, okay, what type of scenario are they trying to paint? What type of, what do they want us to think? What do they want us to expect? Or are they, you know, just slowly letting us know that, you know, life is abundant out there? It's all over. Many of you are very suspicious of the moon, and rightly so, because there's many things with the moon that are very anomalous. And the moon, you know, from the size of the moon, perfect location, you know, is it even a natural object, or is it something that's manufactured? Was it brought here? Because many of the Aboriginal peoples remember a time before the moon being there, and there's many legends about that as well. And so, is it really just is an observation post for the watchers that we hear of not only in biblical traditions but in many other traditions as well? These beings that watch us from up above. So what do you think? What do you think about all this? What do you think? Are you guys expecting Project Blue Beam? Are you expecting the second coming? What are you expecting? And what do you think is going on? Do you believe in ascension and changing and rising up in dimensions. And I'm just going to touch on it briefly, but just a question out there for you guys. Have you noticed that you're more sensitive to energies? Do you notice yourself tingling and vibrating more than you ever have before? Do you notice strange electric impulses going through your body? Are you noticing any high-pitched sounds, through your ears? Because many people are feeling these things, and these are all what have been termed signs of ascension. And the changing in the magnetosphere, the changing in our DNA from all the UV and all the radiation that's coming in, the gamma radiation that's coming in and mutating the life that's here, changing the life that's here. For we are being changed, and everything is changing. We could see the changes. That's really pretty obvious. So share, guys. Share your comments. Share what you're feeling. Share what you're thinking. As always, please do thumbs up to support the channel. Please do join our family, subscribe, and join with us, grow with us, learn with us, share with us. For the most part, we are a non-judgmental group and family that believes every person is entitled to their own beliefs. And the Evolutionary Energy Arts family doesn't impose their beliefs on anybody. They just simply are out here loving each other and sharing with each other and helping each other grow in every way possible, and helping each other prepare for these times and beyond these times, for when we head into a better society. And I do believe that there will be civilization going on. I don't think it's the destruction and the end of everything. I think things are completely going to change, for sure. Everything is going to change. Nothing's going to be as it was. But ultimately, we will get through, and we will have a better society after we are through all these changes, and it will be a unity consciousness, and we will live in harmony and balance and symmetry with each other and with the earth again, in a symbiotic relationship. And that's what has to happen as we purge ourselves of all the destructive energies and tendencies and ways of this past age, as we leave the Kali Yuga, the dark age, and head into a new era of brotherhood, sisterhood, global consciousness, raising our consciousness up out of the fear-based one into something much more positive, in which we can manifest that heaven on earth together. So as always, be blessed with abundant peace, love, health, and well-being. God bless you, my friends and family. Namaste.